Last July, my neighbor Donna knocked on my door at 2 in the afternoon. It was 94 degrees outside. She had just gotten her electricity bill, $411. She looked at mine sitting on the counter. $62, same street, same July. Her house is newer than mine. Her windows are newer than mine. She has a brand new central air conditioning unit that she financed 18 months ago. I have a house built in 1931 that has never had central air conditioning installed. Not once in its entire life. I am Franny. I have been cooling my house through summer without an air conditioning unit since 1987. And I'm going to tell you exactly how I do it, why it works, and why the builders and the appliance industry made absolutely sure that American homes built after 1960 could not do what my house does without one. Stay until the end, because the last method on this list is the one that will drop the temperature in a single room by 8 to 12 degrees within 20 minutes using something that costs $5 and that you can buy at any hardware store today. I will give you the exact setup, the exact materials, and the exact reason it works at a physics level that no air conditioner advertisement will ever explain to you. But first, I need to tell you something that might make you a little angry. In 1900, American architects and builders understood passive cooling. They had to. There was no alternative. And what they built were houses that stayed 20 to 25 degrees cooler than the outdoor temperature without any mechanical assistance whatsoever. Not because the people of 1900 were smarter than us, because they had no choice but to understand how heat moves through a building, and they designed around it. Deep front porches that shaded south and west-facing walls from direct afternoon sun, thick exterior walls with real mass, plaster over brick, or double-thickness wood framing that absorbed daytime heat slowly and released it at night when temperatures dropped. Tall ceilings that allowed hot air to rise away from the living space. Transoms above every interior door that allowed air to move through the house in a continuous loop, even when doors were closed for privacy. Roof lines with wide overhanging eaves that put the walls in shade for most of the afternoon. Orientation of the house on the lot so the long axis faced north-south, minimizing the wall area that absorbed direct western sun in the hottest part of the day. These were not decorative choices. Every single one of those features was functional. Every one of them was a deliberate engineering decision to manage heat without mechanical power. The air conditioning unit was patented in 1902. It became affordable for residential installation in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And within a single decade of it becoming available to builders as a standard installation, every one of those passive cooling features began to disappear from American residential construction. Not because they stopped working, because they were expensive to build. Deep porches require lumber and labor. Thick walls require more materials. Tall ceilings use more paint and more drywall. Transoms require more precise carpentry. Wide eave overhangs require more roof structure. None of these things are cheap at scale, and developers building tract housing in the 1960s and 1970s discovered very quickly that they could build a thinner, cheaper house and simply install a $2,000 air conditioning unit, and the buyer would never notice what was missing until the first July utility bill. By 1980, the passive cooling features that had been standard in American residential architecture for 300 years had been almost entirely eliminated from new construction. And American households became permanently dependent on a mechanical system they had to purchase, maintain, repair, and power every single summer for the rest of time. Here is the part that might bother some people. The air conditioning industry did not suppress passive cooling because air conditioners work better. They do not work better. A house designed for passive cooling in a temperate climate maintains comfortable indoor temperatures more reliably and more consistently than a house with central air conditioning, because a house designed for passive cooling does not fail when the power goes out. It does not develop refrigerant leaks. It does not have a compressor that needs replacement at $4,000. It does not add $400 a month to your electricity bill in July. What the air conditioning industry did was far simpler and far more effective than suppression. They made sure that the alternative was not built anymore. Once passive cooling features disappeared from new construction, the only people who still lived in houses with them were people in old houses. And old houses got a reputation over the next 30 years for being drafty and inefficient and difficult to maintain, which is a reputation that the new home construction industry and the energy efficiency product industry had every incentive to cultivate. Now, I want to be honest with you about something before we go any further, because I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me. Everything I am about to describe works, but not everything works the same in every climate. Dry heat and humid heat are different problems. In Phoenix, in August, the air temperature at midnight is still 92 degrees, and opening windows at night does not give you the cool air exchange that the same technique gives you in Tennessee or Ohio or Pennsylvania. If you live in a climate where nighttime temperatures regularly stay above 80 degrees, some of these methods will help you but will not replace air conditioning entirely. I will tell you which methods work in high humidity climates, which work in dry climates, and which work in both, because that matters, and omitting it would make me a salesperson rather than someone who is trying to actually help you. Let's start with the foundation. The method that makes everything else possible. Thermal mass is the ability of a material to absorb heat slowly during the day and release it slowly at night. The thicker and denser a wall or floor, the more thermal mass it has. Stone has very high thermal mass. Brick has high thermal mass. Thick plaster over wood lath has moderate thermal mass. A 4-inch fiberglass insulated stud wall with half-inch drywall on each side has almost none. Here is exactly what happens in a house with real thermal mass. The sun comes up and begins heating the exterior of the building. A thick brick or stone or plaster wall absorbs that heat slowly, taking 6 to 8 hours to transfer it all the way through to the interior surface. By the time the interior wall begins to feel warm, it is 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and the exterior temperature is already beginning to drop. The interior of the house has remained cool all morning and most of the afternoon without any mechanical assistance at all. Then at night, the wall releases its stored heat back to the exterior as outside temperatures fall, and the cycle resets. In a modern, thin-walled house, this entire process happens in about 2 hours. Heat comes in fast and heats the interior quickly. There is no buffer, there is no delay, and so the air conditioning has to run constantly to compensate for the absence of thermal mass that a well-built 1920s house managed for free. You cannot add thermal mass to an existing thin-walled house cheaply or easily, but you can work with what you have, and the methods that follow will help you do exactly that. The first method is night flushing, and it works in almost every climate in the continental United States except those with very high overnight humidity combined with high overnight temperatures. Here is the exact protocol. 1 hour before sunset, open every window in your house to its maximum position. If your windows have screens, make sure the screens are clean and unobstructed. At the same time, open your attic hatch or attic access door if you have one, because the attic acts as a heat chimney, and allowing that hot air to flow out through roof vents while pulling cooler air up through the house accelerates the whole house cooling dramatically. Leave every window open all night. In the morning, 1 hour before sunrise, which in July is typically around 5 to 5:30 in most of the United States, close every window and every exterior door. Close your blinds or curtains on every window that will receive direct sunlight during the day. You are now trapping the cooled night air inside the house and blocking the daytime sun from heating the interior. In a house with even moderate thermal mass, older plaster walls, brick fireplace, tile, or stone floors. This method will keep your interior temperature 4 to 8 degrees below the outdoor peak temperature on most summer days. In my 1931 house with plaster walls and a brick fireplace, it keeps my interior at 78 to 82 degrees on days when the outdoor temperature reaches 92 to 95 without running anything. The second method is cross ventilation, and it amplifies the night flushing dramatically when done correctly. Hot air rises, cool air sinks. And when you open a low window on the shady side of your house and a high window on the opposite side, you create a pressure differential that pulls cool air in at floor level and pushes hot air out at ceiling level. This is called the stack effect, and your great-grandmother's house was designed to exploit it through every room. The window placement for cross-ventilation that works: open windows on the north and east sides of your house at their lowest position. Open windows on the south and west sides of your house at their highest position. The prevailing summer breeze in most of the continental United States comes from the southwest, which means opening north and east windows pulls that breeze through the house rather than letting it slide past the exterior. If your house has ceiling fans, run them counterclockwise on high during the day. This creates a wind chill effect. It does not actually lower the air temperature, but it lowers the perceived temperature by 4 to 6 degrees, which is enough to move from uncomfortable to manageable on most summer days. The third method is evaporative cooling, and here is where I need to divide what I tell you based on your climate. In dry climates, the American Southwest, the inland areas of California, parts of the Mountain West where humidity is below 40% in summer, evaporative cooling is extraordinarily effective and is the method that I mentioned at the start of this video that drops a room's temperature by 8 to 12 degrees in 20 minutes. Here is the exact $5 setup. Purchase a sheet of Mylar emergency blanket material, the kind sold in camping supply sections, or a roll of reflective insulation bubble wrap, which costs about $8 for a 10-foot roll at any hardware store. Cut it to fit the inside of your window frame on the west-facing window of whatever room you want to cool. Attach it with removable adhesive strips or tape. This reflects up to 90% of the solar radiation that would otherwise come through that window and heat your room. At the same time, hang a wet cotton sheet or a wet towel in front of an open north-facing window. A box fan placed facing inward behind it, drawing air through the wet fabric, is a crude but highly effective evaporative cooler. As the air passes through the wet fabric, water evaporates and the air temperature drops by 6 to 10 degrees before it enters the room. In low humidity conditions, this drop can be as large as 15 degrees. Independent engineering research from desert climate universities has documented this method, dropping a room from 94 degrees to 79 degrees in under 30 minutes using nothing but a wet sheet, a fan, and an open window. The same research documents that a standard window air conditioning unit drawing 1,500 watts of power produces roughly the same temperature reduction. A wet sheet and a $20 box fan draw about 60 watts. That is roughly 1/25 of the electricity. That is the math that the air conditioning industry does not want displayed on a billboard. For humid climates, evaporative cooling through a wet sheet is less effective because the air is already carrying significant moisture and cannot absorb as much additional water vapor. In humid climates, the methods that work best are night flushing, cross-ventilation, and radiant blocking. Radiant blocking is the fourth method, and it works in every climate without exception. The sun heats your house primarily through your roof and through your west-facing windows in the afternoon. The roof absorbs solar radiation all day and conducts that heat down through the ceiling into your living space. Even a well-insulated modern roof conducts significant heat into the house on a summer afternoon. In older houses with less insulation, this effect is dramatic. The solution is radiant barrier, a sheet of reflective material foil face bubble wrap, reflective foil insulation, or even simple aluminum foil installed in your attic with the reflective side facing down reflects radiant heat from the roof structure back upward before it can transfer into the ceiling. Independent energy research from the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory has documented that a properly installed radiant barrier in a hot climate reduces attic temperature by up to 30 degrees and reduces cooling loads by 5 to 10% in houses with air conditioning, and significantly more in houses relying on passive cooling. A roll of reflective foil insulation sufficient to cover the attic floor of an average American house costs between $40 and $80. A single air conditioning service call costs between $80 and $200. The foil goes in once and works indefinitely. The fifth method is what I call the cold sink strategy, and it is the oldest cooling method in the history of human habitation. Below ground level, the Earth maintains a nearly constant temperature year-round. In most of the continental United States, that temperature is between 50 and 60 degrees, regardless of what is happening on the surface. Basements and root cellars and cellars built into hillsides were not originally designed as storage spaces. They were originally designed as the coolest room in the house, the place where the family retreated during the hottest part of the day, where food was kept because the ambient temperature was cool enough year-round to slow spoilage, and where the thermal mass of the surrounding earth provided a permanent heat sink that the rest of the house could exchange air with. If your house has a basement, it is already 55 to 60 degrees down there right now in the middle of summer. A single box fan placed in the basement stairwell facing upward, drawing cool basement air into the main living space, drops the ground floor temperature by 3 to 5 degrees with almost no energy expenditure. An oscillating fan in the upstairs bedroom pointed toward the stairwell at night creates a loop that pulls cool basement air through the whole house while hot air escapes through upper floor windows. This is thermal mass at geological scale. It is free. It has always been free. And it is the reason your great-grandparents did not need an air conditioning unit in a house that stayed comfortable through summers that were, according to historical weather records, not dramatically different in temperature from the summers we experience today. Now let me bring all of this together into a practical Saturday morning action plan, because I know that lists without application are just interesting reading. This coming Saturday, do these 4 things. First, go to every window in your house that faces south or west and put up a reflective barrier on the inside of the glass. You can use emergency blankets, reflective bubble wrap, or even cardboard covered in aluminum foil as a temporary solution. Block the direct afternoon sun from entering those windows entirely. Second, if your house has a basement, open the basement door and place a fan at the base of the stairs facing upward. Run it for 2 hours in the afternoon and pay attention to whether the ground floor feels different. It will. Third, tonight, 1 hour before sunset, open every window. Set an alarm for 5 in the morning and close them. Do this for 1 week and compare your interior temperature at 2 in the afternoon to what it was before. Fourth, if you have a ceiling fan, flip the direction to counterclockwise for summer operation. There is a small switch on the motor housing near where the blades attach. Most people have never touched it. Most people are running their ceiling fans in the wrong direction for 6 months of the year. None of this costs more than $20 to implement this weekend if you already own a box fan and an emergency blanket. The emergency blanket costs $3 at most hardware stores. The reflective bubble wrap costs $8. Everything else you already own. The people who built American houses from 1700 to 1950 did not design for passive cooling because they were environmentally virtuous or philosophically opposed to mechanical cooling. They designed for passive cooling because they had no other option, and the discipline of having no other option made them extraordinarily good at it. We have had another option since about 1960. And the cost of that other option, not just in monthly electricity bills, but in the $4,000 compressor replacement and the $1,800 annual maintenance contract and the complete inability to cool your home when the power goes out for 3 days in August is a cost that was decided for you by builders who wanted to build cheaper houses and by an industry that wanted to sell you a machine you would need to repair and replace forever. Your grandmother's house did not need that machine, and depending on where you live and how you are willing to manage your home through the summer, yours may not need it either. Drop in the comments and tell me what climate you are in. Tell me if you have a basement, what your house is built from, and what your summer utility bill looks like right now. I read every comment and I will tell you exactly which of these methods applies to your specific situation. Because this is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and I am not going to pretend it is. If this video changed how you think about the machine that is costing you $400 a month, hit that like button right now. Because this kind of research takes serious time, and every like tells the algorithm that real useful knowledge deserves to be seen. And we are just getting started.